Welcome to Stupiracy.
Yay!
Thank you. It's nice.
Right.
It's always nice to have a gallery. My name is Tim McKernan. That's Scott Rizzuto.
Hello.
And Riz, before we get into the details of today's episode, let's talk about our educational histories here. What is your background to prepare you?
I'm a high school graduate. Graduated Clarkstown South High School, 1996. Go Vikings. If anybody were to ask how much education I had, and there's the pull down menu, I'm some college.
You're some college. I think I'm some college as well.
Some college.
I'm University of Missouri Journalism School, which is why I'm co-hosting Stupiracy with that background. But I have 8 credit hours remaining. And
what a shame.
Look at the disappointment on your face.
Just like your parents.
Exactly
Disappointed.
right, and my grandparents. Yeah,
they paid for all that education. And 8 credit hours to go?
8 credit hours to go.
They didn't get to see you walk?
Here's the thing. I actually did walk, even though I had the credit hours remaining. So there's a picture of me accepting an empty folder that's supposed to have a diploma in it with a smile on my face.
You did a sham walk.
I did a sham walk. I absolutely did a sham walk. You're exactly right. But here's the thing. While we're both in the drop-down menu of some college, we didn't have to do what they had to do at Harvard and Yale and many other highly acclaimed institutions. And you will find out just what they had to do as incoming freshmen on this week's episode of Stupiracy.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's a deep tease right there.
Yeah, jeez. Whew. Ivy League, huh?
Ivy League. Now, did you consider Yale?
No. I wanted to go to Syracuse.
Also, like Missouri, considered, and I don't know who considers doing the considering, but considered one of the top journalism/communication schools. My understanding was Syracuse, Northwestern, Missouri. Back when we were going to school.
It was the Newhouse School at Syracuse.
That's correct.
Bob Costas went there.
Costas.
And that's why I wanted to go there.
You wanted to be a Costas guy?
Kinda. I looked at him as like, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew Bob Costas did what he did well.
Right.
And I know he went there.
And many other greats have gone to Syracuse.
Right. But you know who didn't want me at Syracuse? Syracuse.
They said we're going to pass.
We're going to pass. And I wound up going to Ramapo College in Mahwah, New Jersey.
Could you spell both the college and the city?
R-A-M-A-P-O.
Okay.
And that's Mahwah, M-A-W-A-W-W-A-H. It was in North Jersey, New Jersey's #1 liberal arts college. Go Roadrunners.
Fight Roadrunners. This is your time. So neither one of us attended an Ivy League school, which I'm sure is alarming to the audience. But for those who did, in between the 1940s and somewhere in the late 60s, part of the protocol was to get your picture taken. Now, maybe at Ramapo and at the University of Missouri, we had our pictures taken. As a matter of fact, I'm quite certain that we did. Did you participate? Was there any like fraternity/sorority system?
Yeah, but I was, a freshman. You don't do that stuff as a freshman.
Right.
At least at Ramapo College.
Home of the Roadrunners.
Go Roadrunners.
At the University of Missouri, you did. And I did join a fraternity. And you hear all of these things about the initiation process, the hazing process. Many of them, honestly, are urban legend and folklore. Fortunately, there were no goats, bricks, ropes, things of that ilk. But even if there were, I'm not sure it would be as horrifying as, again, what I am about to present you today on Stupiracy, which is now known as... Take the headphones off so I can be mobile.
Oh, I can't wait.
The Ivy League nude photo scandal. Scandal.
Yep. The Ivy League nude photo scandal.
Now, I got to be real honest with you here. When I first read about this, I truly thought that this was just a made up, like an Onion kind of story. And then I read more and more about it. And in January of 1995, the New York Times Magazine did a full-fledged investigation on it. And many people have now covered it to find out how and why this happened.
So this is a story from the 90s?
The investigation that got the talk going, 1995. It took place in between the 1940s and the 1968, 70s. Yeah, here's what wound up happening. If you were an incoming freshman at Harvard, Yale,
Princeton,
those high caliber, the elite schools, it turns out, Rizz,
you had to do naked stuff?
You had to get naked and get pictures taken. And I go, I don't know if I necessarily buy it. So let me really dig into this. Well, guess what? It is true. And some are wondering if the photos are still out there. And if you went to Harvard and Yale, there is a good chance that things wound up going well for you. And so a number of names you will recognize and everyone in our audience will recognize have had their nude photos taken.
Are we to assume after this tale is told that if you went to one of these elite Ivy League schools between those years, you had your naked photo taken?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And they're out there somewhere.
Some say they are. Some say they've been destroyed. You be the judge. No matter what embarrassments Harvard students might face in their first few weeks on campus, none will be as mortifying as posing for nude photos, which used to be as much a part of the college registration process as scheduling classes and choosing a dorm. For decades, thousands of students at Harvard and other prestigious schools would arrive on campus, strip down, and pose in front of a camera with 4-inch metal pins sticking out of their spines, essentially turning them into human porcupines.
Whoa. Now, do you remember when you went to school for the first time, how nervous you were?
Yes.
First time away from your folks?
Yes.
On your own?
Yes.
And this is what you have to do? This is your introduction?
That's correct.
To quote-unquote adult world?
Oh, look, I've gotten wonderful grades. I'm going to Harvard. Now, if you don't mind, can you get naked for me and we're going to put some pins on you to look like the human porcupine?
What are the point of the pins?
Ah, and that's where we come into play with our information. For decades, these students would have the pins put on their spine, and the practice of taking posture photos was common from the 40s to sometime around the 1970s. So, what does that mean? And who went to these schools who had the photos taken? Here you go. We have former presidents. George Bush. Nakers, eggs, and bakers somewhere out there for you to...
GW or HW?
You know what? I believe this was the first one.
Okay, HW.
Because in this investigation, it doesn't cite anybody specifically, and George W. was not elected until 2000. So I'm going to operate on the premise it was George H.W. Brandon Tartikoff, network television executive of the Stars. Yeah, he's the orchestrator of some of the Thursday night programming
that's a big name.
Dominated entertainment. Bob Woodward.
Woodward and Bernstein.
Exactly right. Watergate. That went on at Yale. At Vassar. Meryl Streep.
Whoa. She had to get naked and have pins put in her back?
Correct.
Whoa.
At Wellesley, Hillary Rodham Clinton and Diane Sawyer. Per the New York Times Magazine investigation, Rizz, all of them, whole generations of the cultural elite, were asked to pose. But however, the colleges tried to make this bizarre procedure seem routine. And there was a reason for it.
So this is just what you do. This is part of the freshman orientation.
Right. Now, as I made reference to, as a proud member of the Sigma Chi fraternity Xi chapter at the University of Missouri, I went into it candidly thinking at some point a goat was going to be presented to the chapter. And we were going to have a decision to make, because you hear all these horror stories. You hear stories of having to tie a brick to an appendage, and then you would drop said brick
Throw it off the roof.
Right, exactly. And then hopefully the rope's the right distance.
It's a trust
absolutely, of course. But never once did I think, hey, at some point you're going to do the freshman equivalent to beaver hunt and have some porcupine pins on the back. That's maybe because I was in mid-Missouri and not the Northeast. Well, in this case, it was just understood. You're going to go up to the room. There's going to be a guy there, and he's going to take pictures of you. And by the way, you're going to have some pins on there because we're calling it posture photos.
Stand up straight.
Look proud. Like your
shoulders back
on your... Exactly right.
You are Harvard material.
Because of the way you stand.
We here at Harvard. We here at Yale. We stand proudly.
Exactly. But then it turns out there were ulterior motives. We'll have those motives for you when we come back. Welcome back to Stupiracy. And Rizz, I was telling you that they had ulterior motives for these nude photos of the elite at some of these Ivy League schools. Now, the practice actually began in 1880 when the Harvard Physical Education Department took nude photos of all freshmen. And at this time, there were no women at Harvard. And so the Crimson, which is the Harvard publication, noted that, quote, being nude in college actually wasn't that weird.
It's a regular sausage fest. Whatever, right?
Just a few guys on a Saturday night.
A couple guys, naked, smart dudes, hanging out, no chicks.
In other words,
taking pictures,
standard. It's us taking ourselves back to the mid-1990s. Okay. Men did swimming races in nothing but their birthday suits because it was considered more, quote, unquote, hygienic. Again, I'm just reading copy. Yeah. The photo practice continued unabated until 1940 when Harvard researcher William Sheldon co-opted the program and turned it into a whole different thing. And so what he wanted to do was he assigned each student one of 3 labels to describe his body type. Supposedly, Sheldon wanted to photograph the intellectual elite to show what their physiques looked like because he believed they would be indicative of their personalities. Have you ever heard this type of theory?
So 3 different body types.
That's correct.
There's too many sandwiches, you need a sandwich, and just right.
I think that's literally, it's like you've read Sheldon's studies.
Okay.
That's exactly right. So, from the New York Times Magazine investigation in 1995, you got to do that when you got an investigation. Quote, in other words, a kind of eugenic dating service. Quote, studs for the cultural elite. But my talk with one of the professors left key questions unanswered. What was the precise relationship between theorists such as Sheldon, the man who actually took tens of thousands of these nude posture photos, and the Ivy League and 7 sister schools whose student bodies were photographed?
So the best genes, the best bodies, smartest of the smart, will then breed with the women who are also smart and good looking.
And we are going to create the ultimate human beings from the already brilliant minds that are populating these universities. 1940s, I see where you're going.
Somebody else had that kind of idea.
As a matter of fact, that actually is referenced. The Nazis compiled similar archives. I assume that was the direction you were going in case there was something I wasn't aware of.
No, that's where I was going.
Well, that's a good read on your part. The Nazis compiled similar archives, analyzing the photos for racial as well as characterological content. The Nazis often used American high school yearbook photographs for this purpose. The American investigators used an archive that could correlate each freshman's bodily configuration with later life history. That the photos had no value as pornography is a tribute to their resolutely scientific nature. Just kind of like a little fun disclaimer right at the end that, hey, nobody was quote unquote using these for anything other than the study that was being conducted. In other words, based on how you stood and also your body type, they believed they could predict how you would turn out. That was the real reason for the study.
I'm thinking the photos look like Tom Brady when he just got into the NFL.
Right. An alarmingly dumpy quarterback who went on to become the greatest of all time.
That's what kind of photo I'm thinking, you know, in the white boxers.
Right. But alas,
nothing sexual.
No. So what they were saying was that generations of America's ruling class had been unwitting guinea pigs in a vast eugenic experiment ran by scientists with a master race hidden agenda. And so, for years, these students who were photographed nude as freshmen at elite institutions wondered, where are these photographs? We'll tell you where.
Oh, where are they?
Coming up. Welcome back to Stupiracy. So
dude, I'm at the edge of my seat, man. Where are these photos?
Well, Sheldon, who orchestrated the whole thing, made a fatal mistake with his photos. Tens of thousands of photos of the elite as they went into these institutions. What his plan was to take them on the road. Here's what he did. He never completed and partly burned what he called the Atlas of Women. That was the name of what was going to be the publication and this study of all of these pictures of women to show.
He was going to take the best of photos and almost make a coffee table book out of them.
I don't know if it was going to be a coffee table book or some kind of like, you know, traveling circus. Hey, come on by. We've got the bearded lady over here. And hey, over in this tent, take a gander. Here's the Harvard class.
Good-looking women.
Yeah. Here's what's doing over at Wellesley.
Whoa.
In attempting to compile what would have been the companion volume to his Atlas of Men, which included hundreds of nude Harvard men to illustrate each of the 3 body types, Sheldon made the strategic mistake of taking his photo show on the road. And what was happening was the following. In September of 1950, Sheldon and his team descended on Seattle, University of Washington, as a matter of fact, and they had agreed to play host to his project. The Huskies wanted to see the pictures. He'd begun taking nude pictures of female freshmen, but something went wrong, which kind of sounds odd, a sentence just in general, that something hadn't already gone wrong, that he had begun taking pictures.
See, I'm wondering in his head if he thought it would be an honor to be put in the book. Like at some point, it'll be an honor to be picked for the Atlas.
That's a different perspective on what he was doing. But
because in his head, he probably thought what he was doing was right.
Sure, he thought that he was trying to help build the perfect human beings. Here are the best and brightest, and we will be able to filter out those who don't have.
And if Sheldon, of all the pictures, picked you to go in the Atlas of the best, how prestigious.
Yeah, it's like having the best Tinder profile in 1950. The next morning, a battalion of lawyers and university officials stormed Sheldon's lab. They seized a photo of the women, convicted the images of shamefulness, and sentenced them to be burned. The angry crew then shoveled the incendiary film into an incinerator. A short-lived controversy broke out. Was this a book burning?
Well, I mean, who knocked him out?
A witch hunt. Well, when he was taking it on the road and he brought it to Washington, that's where they had a problem. The University of Washington.
So this guy, smart guy, thought there'd be no problem.
That's correct. Was Professor Sheldon's nude photography a legitimate scientific investigation into the relationship between physique and temperament, the raw material of serious scholarship, or just pornography masquerading as science?
Whoa.
They burned a few thousand photos in Seattle. Thousands more were burned at Harvard, Vassar, and Yale in the 60s and 70s. And then the colleges phased out the posture photo practice. But thousands more escaped the flames, tens of thousands that Sheldon took at Harvard, Vassar, Yale, and elsewhere, but sequestered in his own archives. And what became of those archives? They don't know, but he said they were out there somewhere, and they continue to look.
So there could be naked photos of Hillary Clinton in a file cabinet somewhere?
That's correct.
We need to find that file cabinet.
That if you want to see presidents, you know, again, I'm not going to kink shame.
Sure.
That could be your thing. Not you.
Not me. No.
The royal. You.
Right. What a wild story.
I had never heard of the nude photos of the Ivy League and dug deep into it, and sweet mother of mercy was I surprised when I found out.
And the Sheldon guy was the ringleader.
That's correct.
And all these other Ivy League schools were in cahoots.
I don't know how it all got through, and that because we picture something like this just happening once in 2024, and it'd be like, well, that's the end of that, much less that it was going on to the point that it went on for 30 years.
And this is part of a process of...
Well, it was told, hey, we want to make sure your posture's good.
For incoming freshmen.
Right. Hey, your shoulders are slumping. We're not sure you're going to do well in math.
Wild.
No. Whole different thing. And then he's like, I got some pictures. Let's take them on the road. I'm going to go over to the other side of the country and show them off. And the University of Washington said, no, that'll end it. True story, New York Times Magazine, 1995 was the original investigation. That's where you can find it.
Do we know what became of the Sheldon guy?
The Sheldon guy went into shameful retirement. As you may imagine.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Now, years later. But now, a focal point of today's episode of Stupiracy.